All right, welcome to the Broker's Voice. I'm excited today. I have got Elliot Bassett on from Ellerbrock Norris in Omaha, Nebraska. Ellerbrock Norris is a commercial and benefits insurance agency that has done some extraordinary things with sales assessments to help them grow their agency exponentially. And I wanted to have Elliot on because, well, first let me say, Elliot, welcome aboard. I should probably say welcome aboard. Let's introduce yourself.
Well, hey, thanks, man. It's good to be here. This is the first time I've done one of these live. So
No, this is good. This is good. It's a good way to expose to our audiences.
yeah, it's awesome. No, I love it. I love it. Podcast style, it's just fun to have long form conversations around this stuff. So
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, our background, we run Ellerbrock Norris, which is a risk management and insurance agency, as you mentioned, property casualty benefits, financial services, and a couple other things. But I've really leaned into an assessment-based sales process, right? As you mentioned, and since we started to make kind of this shift around the old school, just what we call kind of the copy, quote, pray model, right? Or hey, we got this market that you should look at, or whatever it be. Made this shift around 2015 and have just seen a exponential growth. I mean, we've over doubled the size of the firm, and a lot of that we can equate back to really differentiating ourselves through this process against other folks that are still out with that old model. This allows us to truly understand the client, build deeper relationships, and really be able to bring them meaningful solutions outside of just an insurance product, right?
Absolutely. And I look at you like I met you, Andy, and the team at Ellerbrock a couple of years ago when I was still advising, and we'd actually done some collaboration and partnership.
Yeah.
And one thing I really found impressive was how you guys leverage your whole process you call Encore, and including the sales assessment piece of that, which we're going to get into. And I was just really impressed on how easy you made it look to guiding a prospect through your sales process from start to finish. And so,
yeah,
let's start right here. I want you to define what a sales assessment is, because what you just said earlier about the spray, pray, hope it works type model, there's many, I'd say most agencies, Elliot, that still lack a sales process whatsoever. Every advisor is kind of left to his or her own freedom to figure out how to get things across the finish line. But we truly believe you got to have a defined sales process. So actually, before I even ask you the assessment, talk about how you feel about the importance of having a defined sales process.
I think it's critical. I mean, you think about anybody that's at the top of their game in anything, they create a replicatable process that they can improve upon, right? Practice, they can know it inside and out. So you get in a situation that you're not familiar with, you can lean back on your process, right? It's also a differentiator. So you mentioned Encore. We branded that process, right? Because you can't get that process anywhere else. Nobody goes through it like we do. Even if we placed, a P&C product with Travelers or a benefits plan with, United Healthcare or whatever, you can get that anywhere, but you can't get the process that helped us determine that was where we need to get to. And that's at the crux of the whole thing is number one, we need to create a way that we can do this consistently so that we can improve. We can differentiate with that client. But then, that's that RIP. They can't get that anywhere else. And it allows us to kind of separate ourselves from, everybody else that might be saying the same message essentially to the client, right?
That's a really good point. I tell our clients all the time, be really honest with yourself. What you're sharing with your prospects is not the first, you're not the only one. Like, you don't have a secret sauce. Trust me, guys, no one has a secret sauce anymore.
Yeah.
But what your secret sauce is how you communicate it through a process. And when you brand and name that process, that's what makes you unique. That's what makes you different. And that's what you guys have done with the whole Encore process. So let's talk about the assessment piece. Since you guys have been using a sales assessment successfully for a few years now, like for somebody listening and going, I don't even know what a sales assessment is. Let's start by just defining, how do you view a sales assessment and its piece or its involvement with the sales process?
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's actually misleading to even use the term sales in front of it, because what we're actually trying to do in the assessment is we're just trying to better understand the client better understand what problems they're facing. That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And so we want to create, assuming that we have a well-defined, client profile or whatnot, or maybe you have multiple, so you can create a separate assessment for each. But you really want to create that assessment that you're going to walk through with each of these clients, so that you can do it consistently. And when you do that, you're going to start to see trends, right? Kind of as you mentioned that we're all pretty much the same in what we're talking about, or there's no secret sauce. There isn't for our clients either. They're all dealing with the same problems. They're all just going to deal with them differently, have different ones that are most important. And that's what we want to try to figure out. Because once we can start to learn through that assessment, what's important to this client, then we can actually start to bring them meaningful solutions. So that's what that assessment process is. Even the assessment can be misleading. We don't want it to be a questionnaire. We want it to be a conversation. It could span a couple meetings because maybe you get in and you're really diving deep in an area that's meaningful to them and you don't get to the other 3 or 4 areas you got to talk about. But that's where having a consistent way to go through it will allow you to be more conversational because you're used to having this conversation. You're used to asking the questions. The folks, we've experienced this, and then the folks that we see out implementing models like this, the ones that are just absolutely killing it are those that have created this consistency. They know it inside and out. They've practiced it. They don't have to reference a sheet, to walk through it. They can almost do it by muscle memory, because it's consistent. And so I want to be that's the ultimate goal, is that we can create a conversation to identify problems and meaningful things to our client. That's the goal. However you get there, if you want a set of 20 questions, great. If you want 2 really open-ended questions and you roll through your conversation after that, great. Whatever works for you. But this piece of just identifying those problems with your client is one of the most important pieces of the process.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think, you guys historically have been a commercial insurance agency, but you have
Correct.
now substantially grown even in the employee benefits. And, when you think about the commercial side of the business, you guys come in and there's many different risks you can address, right? When a business thinks about what they could be exposed to. But even with benefits, what I love about what you guys have is you really focus on 10 areas of risk, which includes benefits, and let the client, here's where I want you to put your input in, Elliot, is when you think about the assessment. One reason I love what you guys have done, and we're going to get to a solution you have actually built to help other agencies, which I think is awesome. There's a big difference between questions that result in a yes or no answer and questions that might be more on a scale of 1 to 10, right?
Yeah.
Or 1 to 5. Talk about that, because when you look at the assessment you guys use, it isn't just the yes, no, tell us who your carrier is, tell us your X date. How have you found the questions you guys are asking to be impactful on the conversations you're having with your prospects?
Yeah, closed-ended versus open-ended questions, right? And both have their place, but in this particular, how we're discussing the assessment right now, I would say you want 90% of your questions to be open-ended questions, meaning the client can't answer with a yes or no. They can't answer with a number or a figure or a specific answer. They have to elaborate. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get them to think and to help you walk through this to go deeper with them. An example would be, does your broker support you in the open enrollment process, right? Well, yeah, they do. Yep. That's a closed-ended question versus, hey, tell me about your open enrollment process. Completely different. Now they're going to have to say, well, here's what we do, and our broker kind of does this, but they don't do that, and blah, 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 blah. You get a whole different set of information that then you can keep asking questions about. Again, there are places for closed-ended questions. You could say, does your broker support you in the open enrollment process? Okay, tell me what that process looks like. So it's just being aware of, but that's where the practice, that's where the consistency of how you're going through this is key, is be aware of the questions you're asking and be consistent throughout so that you're really driving a conversation. You can't stress that enough. You want to pull that info out of the client because they'll tell you. Again, they've been trained to get these same questions. Like, how many times have we walked into a client meet or a prospect meeting and they've got all the stuff ready for us,
Go
They're
get
like,
us.
oh, yeah, here's everything you guys need, right? Okay, see you later. And you're like, nope. We need to have a conversation first. So, but I think you're spot on there. Again, both have their place, but open-ended are going to get you the gold for
Yeah,
sure.
no, I love two things you said about that. And first, if you're listening to this, I hope you're taking notes. But two, if you got any questions as Elliot and I talk, just put them in the comments of
Yeah, for sure.
this live here, and we'll get them and we can answer those questions. Two things I love that you said there, Elliot, about assessments is number one, we use assessments even with our own clients. Like if somebody scheduled a discovery call with us, we have them fill out a really short assessment. Here's why. Because if I ask you, hey, are you serious about fixing the marketing problem or the gap you have with your marketing at your agency? If you say yes to me, that still may not tell me you're serious, because if I ask that question a different way, on a scale of 1 to 10, how serious are you about fixing the marketing gap you have in your agency? And you give it a 6. Well, in a yes/no scenario, you probably would have said yes.
Yep.
But it's only a 6 out of 10 yes.
It's not really that, it's not really high priority to me. It's like, yeah, sure, I'd love to fix that. But
And what I love, the other part about the assessment, I love the concept is it's one, they get to grade themselves, right? In a way.
Yeah.
But two, the power in the question is when they give it a 2 out of 5 or a 6 out of 10, whatever it is, you going, why did you give it a 6 out of 10?
Tell me more about that. Most powerful question you can ask.
Absolutely.
100%. Yep.
Talk about the power of the scoring, though. This is the other part I love about assessments. Number one, when you guys walk through your assessment, and it's a pretty extensive assessment, that's why I love it. At the end of the assessment, it produces a score.
Mm-hmm.
And talk about, what that score, that final score, the power of that final score. What does that mean to your consulting, and what can that mean for the prospect who just went through the assessment?
Yeah, it's one of, in my opinion, the most impactful pieces of the way that we do an assessment, but I think it's important for anybody to score or quantify your assessments with a client. Because at the end of the day, we sell a very intangible product, right? The client can't touch, see, feel it. It's a promise that if you have a claim, we're going to pay it on your behalf, or, et cetera, et cetera. And hopefully the client doesn't really have to use it or have issues with it. They're obviously going to have health insurance claims, but hopefully that's not, anything major, and it's just kind of, status quo. So what we want to do, though, is to be able to say, like, even though things might be operating okay or well, you still have gaps, you still have areas that you need to improve on, or that we could bring you solutions in, and we need to be able to show them. They might think it's kind of like your question of how serious are you? They might think that they're serious, but they're really not. They might think they're doing well in this area, but they don't realize how much better they could be doing. And so we want to be able to visually show them, hey, we went through this assessment. Here's how you score. Here's how other people like you tend to score. Here's what good means. Here's what okay means. Here's what bad means. However you want to do it. It's important that we put something up visually that they can see, they can feel it, right? And then it also helps us set the baseline, because how many times have we gone in, right, and we do, from our perspective, everything extremely well in how we advise and work with a client, but they have a major cancer claim, or they have this, or they have that is going to increase their rates next year. Well, if the client is viewing us and their barometer for how well we're doing is if their premium's going up, well, guess what? They're going to be like, you guys did really crappy. Like, what the heck, versus if we go through this process on an annual basis and their score is improving because they're feeling better about these areas that we're bringing them solutions in, it creates a much different conversation. They're still not going to be happy about the premium going up, but they can ideally separate us from that and the work that we're doing for them, because they see that score improving and they realize why it's improving. Right.
That's a great. We view the same thing even with our company here with some of the marketing we do for agencies. Right. If it's quantifiable, I can't necessarily always tie my value to the client's result in money.
Yep.
But hey, if we can say your marketing's performing, which means maybe you have a closing gap and sales gap, at least we can quantify it. It's so important, I think, to be able to quantify results, especially in our industry. Right. People want to know what kind of ROI am I getting from what I'm investing my money in. Quick question before we dive into a solution you guys have actually built, because this is really why I wanted to have you on. It's a two-part question. Number one, once you guys started using an assessment, did you find it easier to qualify and disqualify prospects in the process? And number two, have you found that the sales assessment, the assessment, has had a profound impact on, quite frankly, making your proposals easier?
So yes and yes to both, but I'll elaborate. The first part about that question, pre-qualifying clients, I mean, absolutely. And we've really leaned into it where if a client doesn't want to go through this process for whatever reason, that's the ultimate pre-qualifier right there. Because anytime we get outside of this, we realize that, maybe a client's a short-term deal and they say all the right things, like, yeah, I want to go through that down the road and whatever. Really, they're just trying to get a quote, and it's back into the old rat race, right? They leverage it with their current and so on and so forth. So it's the ultimate pre-qualifier in my mind. Even after you do the assessment, you might realize, like, this client's a train wreck. Like, it's not going to be good. Like, I'm not going to be able to create success for them, even if I win the deal. So I'm setting myself up for failure in the future. I may want to, very nicely pass on the deal or recommend somebody else or whatever. So yes, it's the ultimate pre-qualifier. And then, the flip side to that is you can also use it on the front end to pre-qualify before you put the work in, right? So you lay out, hey, this is the process that we go through to better understand our clients, to better know where you're at and how we can support you, and pre-qualify that way as well. I know firms that will lay out this process and use that to go for a BOR. And they say, we go through this process with clients, not with prospects. And so they sell based on that. So that's, a whole nother conversation. Remind me of the second part of the question.
Proposals. Hey, and I want to make a quick point before you go there, because what you said is important. I think also good agencies have, in that sales process, they are very clear describing the process to the prospects up front. You just said that, when you go meet with a prospect for the first time, we didn't really touch upon this, but you got to lay out how your process works.
Yeah.
If they don't know what's next, they're not going to take what's next.
Correct.
So that's very important for people to understand. And by the way, I'm going to put your email address up here. If you're listening, you want to reach out to Elliot with questions, feel free. We're going to be talking about something they've built that's really damn cool that you guys need to see. But the second question, Elliot, was your proposals. Now that you're using assessments, have you found, like, developing a good sales proposal that you come back with where you are asking for the business has become a little bit easier?
Oh, 100%. And they're way more meaningful, right? Because they can be tailored to those really important things that the client has told us are important to them. But we've gone away from even the proposal terminology to the planning terminology. Hey, we're presenting the results of our assessment. Here's the areas that you were scored low in, you told us you needed help in. Here's then the plan that we're going to put in place to solve for these, right? And then your proposal comes up. Here's the offer we're willing to make, the quote, the whatever you got to do to get the business. But that plan shows, it's the roadmap that shows, hey, you've got all these issues, but here's how we're going to help you solve them very specifically. Other people talk about timeline of services or, your service timeline, whatever it is. That's a very important piece because, again, we think the client can connect, that they have these issues and they can connect that the solution we're providing to them is going to solve it. They can't, especially if they're not used to it. So we want to lay out the yellow brick road for them to say, hey, here's specifically the steps that we're going to bring to you. And it shows also, a lot of times our clients don't know the work we do for them, right? And we might be doing a lot of the same stuff that another firm's doing, but we just tell the client and they're like, oh crap, I'm not getting any of that. They're not doing any of that for me because they don't know. And we don't want also our competition coming in and telling them everything that they're doing, and we're not telling them, right? So again, a plan can help us do that along with your proposal, but it makes it way more meaningful. It's way more targeted. And it can allow you to win a lot more business once you get to that step.
And the strategies and the next steps are more clear. And it goes back to, you're now no longer selling products against your competition. You're selling a process they don't have.
Correct.
And I've told people, you can't be better anymore. You have to be different. And having a process like your Encore makes you different. And so, with the time we've got left, I want you to go in now, because this is, again, something I have been so blown away with is I love people who take and solve their own problem and then realize, I bet there's other people who have the same problem.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the program, the assessment program you built, the tool called Launch, and how you built it for your own agency, and now how you're going to be sending, or you've partnered with other agencies to help them have an assessment tool to make their sales process more effective. Where did this start? What was your idea that, hey, we've got to build a tool to solve this?
Yeah, I mean, it started out of frustration, as most of these things do, right? We knew that once we implemented this process with a prospect, we were going to win more than not, right? And we had proven that the process worked. The problem was it was cumbersome to implement. You had to kind of redo an assessment every time or rebuild one every time you wanted to go out. It just wasn't easy, and so it wasn't being implemented consistently. We tried a lot of different technology solutions, piecing things together. And eventually we just decided that, we needed to build our own to help solve our specific problems. Right. To your point, then, in quickly talking to other firms that we know in the industry, this is a common problem. Right. And some firms have a model like this and want the tool. Some are like, we know we need a different model, and this can help us build that model on top of it. So yeah, we built it to your point of helping solve our problems, and realize that we can really help elevate the game of a lot of other firms out there that want to take that next step, be different, do things better for their clients, and provide the tool to do that.
So how can other agencies out there take advantage of this? Because I've seen a demo myself, right? And
Hmm.
I know we've got some things in the works that I'm excited about to be
Yeah.
off our clients. You know, how does this make, before I say how can they can get their hands on it, but how can this make an agency's life easier? Because I think I go back to agencies, most of them have this gap where they don't have a good sales process, let alone an assessment they can use in the process. How is the launch that I keep saying, the launch you guys have built? How is this going to make agencies' lives easier, especially in the sales process?
Yeah, I mean, if you're an agency that doesn't have assessments or isn't working in this model but wants to get there, Launch just provides you a turnkey tool to help you build that on top of, help make that process easy. Um, if you are an agency that's taken that step and has some of your own assessments or are working towards this model, it really becomes that chassis that you can put those in. And again, make it easy. That's what we found a lot of producers and risk advisors. We're out beating the streets. We want to get the next deal on. We want to, we're trying to get in front of clients as much as possible. We don't want to be back behind our desk filling out quotes or assessments or things, right? And so that was one of the biggest things that we wanted to build with Launch, is make that process simple, easy. It's intuitive, right? It takes you to the next step. You don't have to you have to build a proposal after you get done or whatever. The system's going to just do a lot of that for you. And so really it's out of the box. It comes with 10 pre-built assessments and 10 different impact areas of risk. Benefits is one of those. But then you can use or not use any of the other ones you'd like to kind of increase your value prop for your client. Or
And
maybe build
it
out
doesn't
another
matter
division.
if they're a commercial agency, commercial benefits, or
Yeah,
just benefits. Anybody can use it, right?
correct. Yep, 100%. Yeah, and we've found a lot of firms that might just be, say, a benefits shop, but they start asking the insurance assessments because they've got a relationship over here that can really shore up that P&C relationship on their client. They can actually identify that need with the prospect, rather than just who's your P&C broker, and we've got a good option for you. They can actually drive that relationship or that referral to bring in their partner to do that.
Well, that's a really good point, because there's a lot of benefit shops and P&C agencies out there that have a partnership with each other, right?
Yep.
Two different entities, but neither of them have a sales process, right? And not only can it help one side identify and uncover opportunities for the other side, but it actually can let both sides really align and streamline with each other. They could technically be using the same assessment, even though they are two different entities.
Yeah.
Talk quickly about that, because at E&I, how many producers do you guys have across commercial, wealth, planning?
I think we're at 12 or 13 now.
Yes, you guys got 12 producers. How is this? Have you seen a big impact on the fact that, okay, we've got 12 producers all doing their thing, but you know what? When it comes to the process, they're all doing the same thing.
Yep. Yeah, it creates consistency. So what that allows us to do then as leadership of the firm is bring better resources. We can tweak maybe how we're doing something in that process that we're seeing, a lot of clients are falling off here. It's because we're not doing this well. We can do training, we can tweak launch, we can tweak the assessment, things like that. Or maybe we need to build a better program that a bunch of our clients are having this issue, right? Well, let's build a program that we can go offer to them, right? Or a white paper or a whatever that is more valuable. But now we have the information because everybody's doing it consistently.
Yeah.
We can make a lot of those different determinations. It is really difficult, especially as you get a team of salespeople out there, and that could just be 2 or 3. When everybody's doing things differently, to create any sort of improvement, right? Because you got to go to each individual, learn how they're doing it, and improve their process versus improving it at the top and going out and delivering on that process.
Yeah, I would say that is, in my opinion, that's one of the biggest problems our industry has. Whether you are a small mom and pop shop, I'll call you that, that 1-2 employee agency, or you're one of the big logos we all know.
Yep.
Most of them lack a sales process. It is literally still go get them, kid. Go make it happen. Here's your validation date and the amount of revenue you got to make. Go figure it out. And it blows me away because without a system, it's hard to win these days. And so, like I said, watching what you guys have been able to do, not only in your commercial business, but entering now the benefits business and substantially growing there very quickly. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact you have a defined process.
Yep.
So if there's somebody watching and says, okay, yep, that's us, we're lacking that process, and I want to know more about launch, and I want a demo of this tool, I want to see how it works, how it could help our agency, other than your email address that I've got plopped up right here, is there any other ways to get a hold of you, Elliot?
Yep. Email is great. Or you can also go to getlaunch.io. There's a landing page that you can fill out a form on. It'll ask you a few questions, and then that'll, shoot it to us, and we can line up a demo or reach out to you and communicate that way. But I love hopping on calls and meeting new people, what you're doing, how we can help. Always open to that too. So, we can get something on the calendar to discuss as well. But those are probably the 2 best ways to reach out.
Awesome. I'll wrap up by saying, if you have a good marketing system and you pair it with a good sales system, I truly believe you become unstoppable. And that's why, again, watching what you guys have done at E&I, for you listening in, if you lack a system right now, please do not allow yourself to go into 2023 without any kind of process, because all you're going to do is create more chaos for your producers. They're all doing their own thing. Nobody's talking to each other. Therefore, honestly, nobody's hitting their sales goals. That's the reality. And you're not growing the way you want to. So take a look. In fact, tomorrow, Elliot's going to be joining me on our weekly or bi-weekly now Complete Game webinar series. And we're going to talk about sales assessments again. So I'm excited to have Elliot join us there. If you want to know more about the webinar and you want to attend, I'm going to put a link up in it, post this live, and you can register yourself for that as well. So Elliot, I want to thank you.
Yeah.
Time, man.
Thanks, man.
Great connecting.
Always good. Yeah.
And for everybody else listening in, take this seriously. Have a process. Be consistent with that process. I don't care if you have 1 producer or 12. They have all got to be doing the same thing. So you know what happens when you create consistency and clarity? You do massive things. Take care.
Right. Thank you.